Bears, blog, boys, you know it all, computer, analytic, geeky nerds. Michael Schneider, Tom Cavanaugh, the Bear, blog, boys, know-it-alls, doing some podcast somewhere. Nobody wants to hear you. Geeks, you pencil-pushing, skinny jean-wearing geeks, you.
Coming to you live from our mom's basement, this is the Bears Blog Boys podcast. I am your co-host, Tom Cavanaugh, here with my good buddy and other co-host, Michael Schneider. Schneider, we did our mock off season, and since then, I just feel like it has been an onslaught of Bears news that we had to come on here and cover. But, buddy, how have you been doing amidst all the chaos?
Good. It's always nice to see you so soon. I know you were grinding last night with our boy Luke on the wide receiver rankings. I will be listening to that on my way to work this morning. But yeah, man, a lot of exciting Bears news. I feel like we recorded, what was it, on Tuesday? And then it was yesterday, all the news started breaking out or something like that. So yeah, I'm excited to kind of dive deep into it, what that means for the Bears, and just discuss all the opportunities that come and the impact of some of the moves.
Yep, and there's a lot of ramifications that came with this news, with the news that's how the Bears will approach this offseason. And Snyder, I feel like we got to start off with the big shocker that no one saw coming. That was Drew Dalman retiring at age 27 after just 1 year with the Bears. From my understanding of the situation, his dad played in the NFL. He's had a couple neck surgeries. It's just kind of having a hard time in his later years. And I think that really hit home with Drew Dalman, and he probably just wanted to go out on top and not put his body on the line. And that's totally understandable choice. I mean, I could only imagine the things that these guys go through physically, especially later on in your life. But it was just a huge surprise to the Bears. I mean, this was a position group, I would say, the interior offensive line, that was the strength of their team last year, and he was a huge part of that. So now they head into an offseason with basically, that the center position probably goes to the top of the list when you're talking about needs, at least on offense. And that was something they were not really planning for heading into the offseason.
Yeah, that was for the Bears fan in me, right? And just talking about the lens of the Chicago Bears, it's definitely a tough blow. I mean, this is a guy who came in, hit the ground running. He's calling protections. I mean, Ben Johnson, no familiarity with the head coach, and the guy, again, just hits the ground running there. And I feel like, I don't know, Tom, with like a Ben Johnson offense, like, the running scheme, everything like that, it's a little bit complex, right? You got to be on the same lingo with the head coach, in chemistry with the offensive line. Like, it's a lot of instincts, a lot of IQ.
I think Snyder cut out a little bit, but yes, I mean, I totally agree. I mean, the hard part with Dalman and losing him, outside of him being a great player, is that you were never going to find a better, well, unless they go out and sign Tyler Linderbaum, which we'll talk about, you were never going to find a better scheme fit, I feel like, than a guy like Dalman. I mean, when you're talking about an outside zone center and a guy that allows you to do so much in the run game when you want to run that specific scheme, that's the hardest part to me, Senator, to replace, because I really feel like the driving factors of a great run game, if you have a good center that can actually run block, it is not just like a guy that needs help, like that takes your run game so much further. And that to me is going to be the hardest part for them to lose.
Yeah, that's a tough one, Tom. I know a lot of Bears fans are crazy. I think I've seen some crazy stuff like he needs to return all the money, stuff like that. I would never get of that extreme, but I understand how compassionate some Bears fans are, and that's tough. I think I know we're not gonna go super into it, but that's like a tough debate, right? Like the NFL is not for long, right? Typically, most guys are lucky to get one contract, right?
Yep.
And to walk away from 10, 20 minutes, whatever it is a very tough decision, right? You combine that with the medical risk and stuff like that, and like, hey, later in your life, when you're in your late 30s, 40s, 50s, you're not going to be making 10, 15 million of dollars. So it's such a incredible, difficult situation that he probably had, like, within him, his family, considering that. So to step away, and I'm sure he considered all of that. It definitely was for obviously a huge reason. So you got, it sucks as a Bears fan, and just as a Bears fan, right, in the Bears, but you got to feel for the guy.
Yep, and I'm sure Snyder, the door would always be open if he ever wanted to return. I honestly don't think that would be out of the question, because we just saw it with Frank Ragnow last year, who was with the Lions and Ben Johnson during their heyday. He retired at an earlier age than most people expected, and then he tried to come back last year. So I think that could be a possibility. But yeah, it is tough as a fan, and I want to make it clear. I think we both do. We definitely respect his decision, and we wish the best. He was a huge part of the Bears' offense success last year, and I will never forget that. So I'm excited to see what's next for him, and now it leaves the Bears with another position to address. And Snyder, you brought up some different points too beyond what I had brought up in the run game. Chase Daniel, the Bears' former backup quarterback, called it out on Twitter. He said that's a huge blow for them because Drew Dalman does call the protections, and I think that's what the Bears are going to be looking to replace. And we'll talk about that when we get into free agency, because there's obviously some other news we got to hit. But yeah, I don't think this is a situation, Snyder, where you're just like next man up. Luke Newman's now our center, and we might draft someone in like round 3 or 4 to develop behind him. Like, no, I think they're going to want some veteran presence who knows what they're doing in terms of calling protections and stuff like that.
And that's the thing, Tom. Like here, if you're in like a drop back, heavy pass system, you're asked on the offensive line and the interior. It's not too complex, right? Mm-hmm. But with Ben Johnson, some guys are pulling. You're moving around. You talk about his athletic ability. It's not just about the talent. It is about okay, now I have chemistry in the system. Now I just have instincts where I know where I have to be. And that's not something you could just call the next guy up or sign a guy off the street and expect him to kind of get that, right? And that's like the blow that you got to look at it that way as well.
Yep, absolutely. I think that's probably I think that's why they went out and prioritized center the way they did last year, because they wanted to take that off Caleb's plate. And I thought we saw it was a huge reason behind Caleb's kind of resurgence last year and his growth, to kind of just worry about the playbook, not have to and have a center you can rely on about that. And then I think eventually you want Caleb to grow to where he can call out protections and change things. And I'm sure he does that every now and then, but it's nice to have kind of the synergy between a center he trusts and Caleb to kind of call those things out. But let's head on to the next big nugget of news. The Bears trade DJ Moore to the Buffalo Bills. And Snyder, it was like some quiet times in terms of what the Bears were getting back. And then it was finally announced that the Bears are getting pick 60 back. The trade was DJ Moore and a 5th round pick to the Bills. And the Bills were trading pick 60 for DJ Moore and taking on all the money, which was pretty much insane to me. I understand that Joe Brady, the Bills head coach, had worked with DJ Moore in the past and probably really wanted to get him in the building because they had that relationship. But that was not the draft compensation I was expecting the Bears to get back for DJ Moore, because they were kind of forced into a corner. They were going to have to trade him regardless. So for them to get a 2nd round pick is just a total win. I mean, it's one of the best trades I think Ryan Poles has ever made.
Most definitely. It's funny, on your preview mock, you had DJ Moore being traded to the Bills because of that Joe Brady familiarity, and you projected getting a 3rd round pick back. And I said, okay, if we get a 3rd round pick, I'm like, okay, that's going to be on the high side. Expect the Bears to eat a lot of money to drive up that return. And I couldn't have been more pleasantly surprised that I was proven wrong. Because like here, I think even Courtney Cronin tweeted it. Amari Cooper was like a good example of like, hey, guy who's coming off 28-year-old season, 800 yards, and you think he was traded for a 5th or a 6th or something like that. So like that, and then the Browns took on a lot of their money, restructured it, whatever. Like that was a good example on what to expect from DJ Moore. To get a 2nd round pick and for them to take on all the money, I mean, that just opened up so much doors, right? You create $15 million in cap, you get an extra 2nd round pick. And here, I love DJ Moore, the player, right? I think last year as a depth piece, It's still again some home run ability there. Some just big time catches, strong hands. I love the DJ Moore tenure, but at the end of the day, the math was just not mathing, right? With Rome out for what was it, 5 to 6 games, Luther Burden emerging, Colson Loveland emerging. Did it ever make sense for your third to fourth target getter to be making $20 million against the cap? No, especially when you have left tackle do a address. Now you have center, and then you have to kind of rehaul the defensive line. It was just like the math wasn't mathing there, right? You had too much on the pass catchers and not enough on other areas and needs. It wasn't about, I don't think, DJ Moore, the individual player. It was more about, okay, hey, the cap's getting a little bit tighter, and we need to kind of spread this out a little bit into other areas. I think that's mainly what it was more about.
100%. It was definitely about that. We talked about it all the time. In an ideal world, you would love to keep DJ Moore. He's like an awesome locker room guy. Clearly, all the players loved him. The fans loved him. I mean, you saw all the texts with the receivers talking about like they were all really, really sad when they found out he was traded. So that's a guy you definitely want to keep in your locker room in an ideal world. But some of the mistakes they made last offseason made it really hard for them to keep him. And then obviously drafting Burden, drafting Loveland, having Rome. It just kind of made for an easier decision, taking emotions out of it, to who would be easy to move on from. And that was DJ Moore, obviously.
Yeah.
So, I just want to like shout out DJ Moore because from the moment the Bears traded for him and then to the very end, all the plays he was making against the Packers, I mean, it has been a wonderful tenure. We were so excited when they traded for him. We thought that was the exact move they needed to make. It was a day after my birthday. I'll never forget that. A banger of a trade that the Bears are still profiting from. And then also, I mean, just like I'll never forget the moments he made this past season. I mean, the game-winning touchdown in the playoffs, and then obviously the game winner in the regular season. Those were moments as a fan that you hope for, and he was able to make them. So I loved everything about DJ Moore's tenure. And I'm just really happy, and I'll always root for him in Buffalo.
Yeah, I remember you had a DJ Moore jersey. You're gonna have to retire that one. Put it up in the rafters. But yeah, it's like it was a good tenure. It's like you're gonna remember it like almost the same way you kind of remember like a Brandon Marshall, Allen Robinson, Alshon Jeffrey. Just guys again didn't stay for long, but were productive. Definitely fan favorites. So his jersey gets held in those same rafters.
100%. All right. Well, now the Bears will have the 60th pick, which we'll definitely talk about this, throughout the offseason. And maybe they could take another center in that range. I think that's a pretty good range for center. But I mean, that's just a huge asset for the Bears to acquire more talent, more cheap talent when they do have some cap restrictions. So really fired up about that. Really happy for DJ Moore, who ends up in Buffalo with Josh Allen and Joe Brady. The next nugget of news, the Bears could not find a trade partner for Tremaine Edmunds. This was I kind of saw this one coming too, and they end up releasing him. So they save $15 million in cap by releasing Tremaine Edmunds, and he will be a free agent. Snyder, I knew that they were trying to trade him. I just look at the linebacker class in free agency. I look at the linebacker class in the draft, and I just don't know anyone who was voluntarily taking on the contract that he was on, and then giving up a pick for it too. I just didn't really think that was realistic. I thought it would have to be kind of like a DJ Moore situation where he would go somewhere that someone had some familiarity with him. And those partners just really weren't out there. So him being released doesn't really surprise me.
Yeah, I was hoping and dreaming maybe we could get a fourth or a fifth. But here, the prize of moving on from Tremaine Edmunds is gaining that $15 million in cap space. So when you talk about the Drew Dalman retirement, the DJ Moore trade, the Tremaine Edmunds cut, now the Bears are cooking with about $45 million in cap space. I believe Ian Rappaport tweeted out, and I know Jason OT at Over the Cap was on it, like firing it out really quick. And that's before any restructures, right? On our preview mock, we talked about, hey, maybe you restructure Sweat, Tooney, maybe you extend Kmet or restructure him. So the Bears do still have a lot of tricks in their bag to get even more cap space, to kind of be a little bit more aggressive in free agency time. I don't even know what they're going to do with this. cap before they even restructure. So I'm kind of excited to get into that a little bit. Share your opinions on what are they planning to do with this, right? You don't just trade DJ Moore, cut Edmunds, and just not spend anything, or I don't know. I don't know what to expect.
Well, they got a lot of positions to address. I mean, there's like now at linebacker, they need a starter. They need 2 safeties. They need a center. They need a lot, and then obviously the defensive line. They need upgrades. Like you said, Snyder, they could try to sell out some of the guys that they have because they've invested in the position, but like they truly probably need more starters in the defensive line as well. So there's a lot that they need to do. I'm glad they haven't just restructured anyone yet for the sake of doing so. You can do that after the fact that someone's agreed to a contract, and if you need to make the cap space, then go ahead and do it. But don't like not ruin your future, but don't hurt your future by making some restructures you don't want to make until you have to do it. So I'm glad they haven't touched any of the money yet. And like you said, they have like around $30 or $40 million in cap space already. So that should be plenty of wiggle room to make some things happen in free agency. We'll talk about the different positions they need to address and maybe the players that I think are the best fits. Snyder, do you want to just transition right into the free agency?
Yeah.
All right. So the big one that everyone is going to talk about is Tyler Linderbaum. And that was not a name that we're thinking the Bears would go after if he does hit the market, because they had Drew Dalman. But if you're looking for the next best, maybe an even better outside zone center, it's Tyler Linderbaum. Like, he is the epitome of the undersized, athletic center that can reach block better than anybody in the NFL. If you're just talking about pure outside zone, which is the type of run scheme the Bears are really good at, Tyler Linderbaum is as good as it gets, but he's going to cost you for as good as it gets. I mean, his contract projection right now is 4 years, $20 million per year. And people are saying he can make north of that number. So the Ravens had already reported, or Eric DeCosta, their GM, said at the combine, they have already offered him a market-setting deal. To me, Snyder, while it would be great to address the position by getting probably the best center at this specific scheme in the NFL, I just don't think he's hitting the market. I really don't. The way Eric DeCosta was talking about him does not sound like a player they're going to let walk. He might test his market, but it sounds like the Ravens are pretty hell-bent on getting him back. So we saw this with Ronnie Stanley last year. It seemed like he was going to hit the market, and then 2 days before the legal tampering period opens, he signs an extension with the Ravens. I think it's going to be a very similar situation with Linderbaum.
Yeah, that's the tough pill to swallow. By some way he were to hit the market, I'd be all for him paying $20 million, right? Here, I mean, I know that Drew Dalman, he frees up $10 million, or Tremaine Edmunds frees up $15 million right there. If you just told me you had to swap their cap hits, I know he's going to cost more in cash. It's just on the ownership and the GM, how they're going to structure it, right? If you told me, okay, hey, you cut Tremaine Edmunds and his 17 cap hit, and you got Tyler Linderbaum for that, I gotta be okay with it. And then again, just the impact, the perfect fit in the scheme, and to be able to solve a long-term need, just to have Linderbaum, Darnell Wright, Jonah Jackson, you hope Tooney for the next year or two. I mean, that is just a strong ass core that you just feel so great about. It opens up so much in the run game. So, I mean, I'd be all for paying it. And I mean, my thing is, Tom, in this window, when you have Caleb cheap, right? The hope and the dream is he continues to grow, and you extend him after the 3 years. He's not going to get expensive for 3 more years, right? You also have Adunze on a rookie contract, Burden on a rookie contract, Loveland on a rookie contract. This young core for the Bears, 3 years down the line is going to get very expensive. So you have to be very calculated. But now is that time where you can overpay a Tyler Linderbaum. And we'll talk about some of the other guys. You could reevaluate that contract and some others in 2 to 3 years. And now you're looking at more of a long-term thing, right? Ryan Poles kind of talks about, hey, we want to sustain this thing. And my opinion is, if the quarterback's growing and Ben Johnson is still the coach, those 2 pieces alone raise your floor, right? That's what makes you a consistent winner. Caleb will get expensive. This young core will get expensive. How you sustain success is leveraging all avenues, right? You see the Rams do it with an expensive quarterback. You see the Eagles do it with an expensive quarterback, and they're still sustained and they're still aggressive, right? It's just those teams always have a lot of draft picks. They leverage every avenue to acquire talent, and they don't stop. And they're really good late in the draft. I think that's how you sustain a core. I don't think the Bears need to be so concerned about the long term. Like, hey, you just came off a playoff win. Let's be aggressive. Let's use this. And I think signing and maybe overpaying a Linderbaum, that's like a Super Bowl mindset, right? So I'm all for it.
Yeah, I agree with you to some extent. I'm always a little weary of paying a center. I think I know they're important, and I know for this offense specifically, they want a guy who can call protections. I think you can go a little bit cheaper, especially with your guards being your strength and them kind of being able to elevate a center. I know it would to have a center that can actually be a weapon in the run game. Again, does add a ton of value, but if he's going to make up to like $25 million a year, like I am just like a little weary of that. I don't know if like a centers are ever worth that amount of money, but again, you talked about it. The Bears are in a unique situation with Caleb on his rookie deal. You want to be aggressive. I totally hear all those arguments. If they ended up doing that, I wouldn't have a problem with it because I do understand how important this position is to this offense, especially with a young quarterback. But I'll just go back to the reality. I don't think he hits the market. I think the Ravens are getting him done because think about it. The Ravens are inheriting the same system with Declan Doyle, and their offensive line coach was coming from the Falcons, ran the most outside zone in the NFL by a long shot at over like 49%. They ran outside zone. That's just not, why would you let the best outside zone center leave the building when that's the route you're going to go? So I truly don't think he hits the market, which is why the next guy, Snyder, with Biadasz, we probably should have mentioned that too. The Bears were going to host Tyler Biadasz, the Commanders center, and he got signed up by the Chargers before they could even do that because he was released by the Commanders and he was free for anybody to sign. The Commanders, and then the Chargers just picked him up on a 3-year, $30 million deal. The next guy in line, who I think will be a massive target for the Bears, given on where they're going to be looking for price range, what it sounds like to Adam Schefter, is the Bills center, Connor McGovern. His contract projection right now is 3 years, $13 million per year. I really like McGovern. I think this is definitely more comfortable for me because he's a solid center. Is he Linderbaum? No, but he's been in a bunch of different systems. He was with Dallas earlier in his career. With Kellen Moore, that's pretty diverse in the run game, where they were at the time. Then he goes to Buffalo, that's more power gap centric, but also they do some zone stuff too. So I really like McGovern. I think this is definitely the route. Is it a downgrade from Dalman? No question. He's not the run blocker that Dalman is, but he's an experienced center that can call protections, that's worked with a veteran quarterback, that's been on a winning team, been on multiple winning teams, been with multiple veteran quarterbacks. And I think I would not be surprised, Tanner, if he was their number one target in free agency.
Yeah, I mean, here that makes a ton of sense. Maybe it is a good. Maybe they do want to approach it a little bit more calculated, right? You sign a McGovern, maybe you take a swing on a guy in round 2, 3, 4, and that's the way you approach it. I mean, my thing is, again, if Linderbaum hits the market, I am convicted on that, just having a surefire slam dunk pick and what it brings in. But again, I don't think he does. But if you're going to address it, this is going to be your backup plan, right? You sign a McGovern and you attack it in the draft, and you have a depth situation. You have a kind of a guy who maybe can take over the reins situation there. So yeah, I mean, I would totally be on board with that approach.
Yeah, he's only 28 years old too, so he's not like the oldest guy in the world. And yeah, I just think I'm pretty intrigued with him and what he's been able to do over the course of his career in Buffalo. So I'm looking forward to if he will be a legitimate target for the Bears. I thought Biadasz was going to get signed by them. I thought that was definitely more of the market they were going to be in. And McGovern, I think, is a better player and it would only cost you a little bit more. So that would be my main target. Again, if Linderbaum hits the market, then maybe we're having a different discussion. but I'm a little skeptical about that. There's a couple other guys I think that are worth talking about. Andre James, I would be panicking if they signed Andre James. He's been pretty rough over the last 2 years. I know he had strong seasons with the Raiders, but with the Chargers, it has not been great. Our boy Ethan Posich, I don't think he's a great fit run blocking wise. That's a Lamont legend, Ethan Posich. I should have clarified by that, Snyder. I don't think he's a great fit. I think he's more, again, gap power. Like that's more his style. That's more of what he was with the Browns. And I think the same thing about Cade Mays, the Panthers center. The guy that I'm looking at is Luke Fortner, who was drafted pretty high and then got cut from Jacksonville because I don't know what was going on over there with Trent Baalke, but he kind of had a resurgence last year, filling in for Eric McCoy with the Saints. I know it's not a 1-for-1 scheme fit. Like they weren't really an outside zone team, but they did run a inside zone at a decently high clip. So if you really had to go bottom of the barrel bargain shopping, Luke Fortner was a guy who was playing some of his better ball last year. And I think he would be a cheap option if you struck out on a guy like McGovern.
Yeah. I mean, I totally see taking that upside swing there. Hoping you find that diamond in the rough. Yeah, that's the thing, right? I know Linderbaum is a dream. You're gonna have to get creative, right? In that aspect, if you do kind of miss on those top guys.
For sure, you're definitely gonna, and that's the thing. I do think this is actually a decent center market. I like some of the names that are there. I think they're backups that played well in stints, and then beyond the starters, obviously. Backups that have played well in stints that you can take a gamble on for not that much money. But at the end of the day, they are gambles and you never want to leave yourself hanging. But let's keep rolling through this. And should we transition to the defensive side of the ball? Because or we can go to tackles. We talked a little bit about tackles. I don't think they're going to be in the market for some of these guys at the top, like Rasheed Walker, Jermaine Illuminor. I doubt that they'll be that aggressive because I think that they brought Theo back. They're still kind of waiting for Ozzie to, come back to full health. But if I was looking at how they would address the position, I would look more towards the bottom of the market and some of these backup swing tackle types. Cornelius Lucas was a guy who I know has spent time with the Bears, but he was just released by the Browns. That's kind of more of the market I'm thinking, like Yosh Nijman, Cornelius Lucas, guys who have been starters in spots, but are not really guys you want as starters for the season while they wait back for Ozzie to return. I think if they were going to be aggressive to attack this position, it would be in the draft.
Yeah, I like that. Give me that 1 year stopgap guy with some of the dudes that you mentioned. Maybe you do still take a swing fairly early in the draft. Maybe a guy with some outside versatility as well. I think it could be a healthy situation there.
Yeah, for sure. I've already pointed out some names in my mock-off season. Yosh Nijman was the guy I signed. I definitely pretty intrigued Cornelius Lucas. He continues to be a guy who's a passable starting tackle throughout his career. It's funny that he was that with the Bears. Then I feel like everywhere he ends up, he is but he's always the guy you don't ever want as your starter, but he'll just end up being a starter for teams. And you're looking more so left tackle too. I'm not really in the market for right tackles and trying to kick them out to left. I feel like with veterans at that stage of their career, that's never really a good gamble. Justin School's another one who's been in the Shanahan system, who's been in those outside zone heavy teams. If you really needed a guy you felt better about starting, who's been okay as a starter, Justin School's another guy to look out for. But again, I don't think they're going to be super aggressive here in free agency. They might just sign a known swing tackle. Josh Jones from the Ravens last year. I know he kicked into guard more, but he's played some left tackle in his career. These are kind of the names. They're no one to be thrilled about. I would be shocked, Snyder. I would be absolutely shocked if they went after a guy like Rasheed Walker, who's probably going to make north of what Dan Moore made last year, which was $20 million a year. I don't see that happening. I don't think the Bears are going to. While they have Ozzie still, who I know is going to be recovering from a huge injury that's going to affect his play status long term, I just don't think that they're going to be that aggressive to replace him.
Yeah, Oh, Tom, there's one comment on there I wanted to address. So, so the Bears were sitting at a little bit negative a million there. I think number was at 7 million. When Spotrac updates the Tremaine Edmunds cut and then the Drew Dalman retirement, the Bears are probably looking closer to 33 million in cap space there. That was one I definitely corrected on that. But again, they haven't done any restructures. And then if you also look like on like the bottom like quarter of the cap hits, those guys are all on the books for like 1 million, 1 million, 1 million, million. A lot, and that's with top 51. A lot of those guys are going to be replaced with like rookie contracts right there.
Mm-hmm.
So then that number typically grows higher. I don't know if it'll be like maybe 5 to 7 million on top of that. So again, I still project the Bears will probably be around 40 million. And, don't get so attached to that. Hey, the Bears have 33 million right now. And that means that's only they could do 33 million in cap. The way, if you sign some of these guys off a free agency, you might backload some of these deals, right? You might sign a guy off the street, whatever, and it might be a $15 million contract, whatever it is, but a year one cap hit might only be 5 million right then and there, or it could get the opposite way, right? You never know how it's going to be. So it's a fluid number. It's not just a really hard number. There's so many variables. There's so many moving pieces to keep it a little bit more fluid there.
Yeah, and that's definitely a good nugget to correct, Snyder, and I definitely think it will be fluid. And again, like you said, they can always make more cap space, and that's why I'm not really like tied to the number that it's currently at. I don't think it really matters until they actually start making investments in free agency. So that number is going to continue to change throughout the course of the first and second waves of free agency. So, but glad you clarified there. Snyder, I think it's time to go to the edge market, and our guys, Bulls HQ, Guilty, he's asking about Max Crosby, which we should probably talk a little bit about before we actually get into the free agents. And we'll talk about what our preferences are at this position. But Snyder, to me, I just wouldn't want to be the team that trades 2 first-round picks for a 29-year-old edge rusher coming off an injury. I just think that's bad business, because you're going to have to extend them. You're going to have to give him more money. And I don't think he's Max Crosby is a great player, especially against the run too. He's probably one of the more complete edges in the league. But when you're looking for difference-making pass rushers, he hasn't been that in the past 2 years. He's been a good pass rusher, no doubt about it. And he could probably be even better on a more competitive team that are playing with leads and really allowing him to win with his ears pinned back and know that teams have to pass against the team to stay in games. Like, to be in more favorable pass rush situations, his numbers would probably be better. No doubt about that. But he's coming off an injury, a meniscus repair. That sounds like it's complicating things right now. He's 29 years old, and he's not at the level of a Khalil Mack in his prime or a Micah Parsons. So to me, I understand that the Bears need to be aggressive and address needs, but I almost think that this would be like an overpay. It would be more in the vein of kind of just throwing assets and money at a position and hoping you solve it when you're not really like being thoughtful and calculated with how you're addressing the position.
Yeah, so I think when you talk about Max Crosby, you have to compare it to, okay, there's Trey Hendrickson is a free agent, Jalen Phillips is a free agent. It's probably opened up a lot more doors. If you could just sign them off the street, right? You have to overpay them, so be it, right? If you have to sign Trey Hendrickson to a 3-4 year deal instead of a 2, and you have to give him, $5 million more dollars, I am game with that, right? Because I would rather sign Trey Hendrickson, who has familiarity in the system, is equal, if not a better player than Max Crosby when they're both on the field, because I guess you could say there's health concerns with both of them, right? So there's both risk there. And if you could sign that, and then here you keep all your draft capital, maybe you like the value at the defensive tackles where the Bears are picking, that I think is better for your team. Now, I say that if Trey Hendrickson, if a Jalen Phillips does not have the interest in signing with the Chicago Bears, Tom, I'm sorry to say it, I am absolutely pursuing a Max Crosby trade. I don't think it's crazy to say the Bears are a Max Crosby away from being a real Super Bowl contender. You're talking about, I don't know if you have to send 2 first, right? But you're probably talking about your pick 25, maybe the second you got for DJ Moore, and maybe just a little bit more extra sauce, maybe a 3rd or 4th round pick. I think when it comes to the contract, maybe you can get some help from the Raiders. Maybe the Raiders will eat a lot of the money, and then you restructure it, and then he is on a little bit more cap friendly with an easy out. And I get it. You don't want an easy out if you just traded a 1st round pick from, but I'm saying the flexibility of maybe it actually comes with a lower salary cap hit than you'd expect. Maybe you can get him for a couple of years for $10 million on the cap because the Raiders helped you out. And that's what you get for trading a little bit more extra draft capital. I just think, again, I laid out what the approach I would rather go because it's going to open up more doors. My thing is, I just want to attack this window, man. I totally think that a Crosby, just from a locker room, from a play style, what him and Sweat could actually do together. I think they're perfect fits for Dennis Allen. I would totally explore it, man. You're talking about pick 25, pick 60, what you got in a DJ Moore return, just a little bit more sauce, man. I think you attack it, man. While the window is kind of cheap for some of these young core guys. But again, I have my preference. I think me and you agree on that. I just think there's a real scenario where maybe Jalen Phillips isn't really the best fit, or Trey Hendrickson wants to go to more of his hometown, a different team with no income, whatever it is. It's really hard to compete with that. So I think if you miss out on those, man, I think you got to attack it.
Yeah, I'm with you that's what I would want to see, what Hendrickson, that's going to cost me first. And like, could I really pull him in here? I think the only leg up the Bears have in the Hendrickson ordeal is that Dennis Allen drafted him. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, because maybe he doesn't want to play for Dennis Allen. I have no idea. But the thing with Crosby, if it's a 1st and a 2nd, I think that's definitely more palatable to do. I just don't want to trade 2 for. It's never been done before. A 29-year-old player, a 29-year-old defensive player has never been traded for 2 first-round picks, and the Raiders have no leverage. He doesn't want to be there, right? So if a team was offering 2 first, that trade would have happened by now. No one's offering 2 first, and I don't want to be the team to do that per se. And I'd really have to get to the bottom of Crosby's medicals, and I guess just feel good about he can get back to the level he was playing at a couple years ago, because he hasn't been that guy just from a production standpoint. And I watched him a bit this past year, and maybe the injury definitely was playing a part on him, but I like him for sure. I think he's a really smart, obviously, like should go without saying. He's a really smart and instinctual player. Like, he finds the ball in the run game exceptionally well. He definitely, like, you could tell he watches film and definitely knows what the offense is trying to do. I think he's a little one-dimensional as a pass rusher. He's very finesse and speed driven, and like on guys that can take that away, I think that's kind of where he struggles. He doesn't have the strength and the power necessarily to kind of counteract. Like Trent Brown, ironically, the Texans like swing tackle, gave him a lot of trouble because he was just long enough to really protect his outside shoulder. And I think he might always have that kind of those limitations, which is why I think he's a tier below the Micah Parsons of the world, the Khalil Macks of the world, when Khalil Mack was in his prime. So it's an interesting discussion. I wouldn't be mad, obviously, if they traded for him. I'd be really fired up. I think he'd be better suited for the Bears than he was with the Raiders. But I don't necessarily see him as like the elite pass rusher. I'm paying that premium 2 first-round picks. If it was a first round, if it was 25 and 60, that's definitely a little bit more the speed I was thinking.
One more question for you, Tom. What if it was the Khalil Mack return? You traded what you assume are 2 late round 1 picks, but then you got the Raiders, specifically the Raiders, right? Their 2nd round pick, which you're assuming would be a top 40 pick. Does that entice you? And they're taking on a big chunk of the salary. What would you think about that? Like, if that's the offer to get it to the finish line, you miss on a Hendrickson, and maybe he doesn't like Dennis Allen. Maybe he they let him walk in free agency, and he has an ill will towards Dennis Allen. We don't know, right? What would you think about that?
So I would definitely be more open to that. I think that's why I have such a hard time doing what the Raiders want, because you got more for Khalil Mack. You paid less for Khalil Mack, and Khalil Mack was better and younger at the time. So, yeah, I would be a little bit more open to that. It would have to be a firm cutoff at 2 round ones, and I'm getting a second-round pick back. I would be okay with that. The problem with the money is I think it's been reported that he wants a new contract. So I think any team that's trading for him is giving him an extension. And they're guaranteeing more money for him, because that's part of the problem right now, which, again, is tricky with the guy who's been banged up, and you kind of don't know the ins and outs of his medicals. So, yeah, I'm sure the cap hit wouldn't be too crazy in years 1 and 2. But, again, that's probably because you're kicking some of that money down the road for him. So, Senator, I think we should probably transition to we could talk about Max Crosby all day. We should probably transition to the edge defenders in free agency. I'll just give out a couple names. We can talk about Trey Hendrickson, but obviously Trey Hendrickson is a guy to watch out for, a guy who was drafted by Dennis Allen. I think he's exactly what this Bears team needs. You don't have to give up any draft capital for him. I think you don't have to give up any long-term commitment. I think it'll be closer to like a 2-year, 3-year deal. And he's projected to average $21 million per year. I have no problem paying that kind of price. It could get tricky with other competitors like in Tampa and stuff like that. And Adam Schefter said yesterday there's been no links to him and the Bears, so that's not a great sign. But I am very intrigued with him. The next guy I think is Jalen Phillips, who I know is not what you think of as a Dennis Allen defensive end, but I think he can do all of those things. Like, would it be a little bit of a weird fit? Yes. But he is Jalen Phillips' listed size. Sorry, that bad podcasting. I got to look this up. 6'5", 263 pounds. So he's got more than enough size to play in a Dennis Allen defense. Is he a little bit more pass rush first? Yes. But I also think he's a decent run defender. And I think he would give an element to the Bears team that they don't have if they signed him as a pass rusher. So this is my second choice. I think he's an ascending player. The injuries are obviously the big thing with him. Like, what is his long-term outlook medically? That's something the Bears would have to get to the bottom of. But he's right now projected for a 1-year, $15 million deal. Like, if that's what he signed and the Bears weren't in on that, I mean, I don't know what to say at that point. That is way too affordable for a player I think is really talented. That I'm all about Philip Snyder.
Yeah, no, I would love that. Just to take the swing on that, if you missed out on Hendrickson, why not, right? But you never know. With these 4-3 defensive coordinators, sometimes they can't get out of their own way. I don't know who was pounding the table for Dio. Fits that mold.
It was Dennis Allen. Right? I can tell you right now, it was Dennis Allen pounding the table for Dale.
Dude, yeah, totally a fit, right? When you look at stature, and you're just selling yourself on what he could be, right? I bring this up all the time. It's like when the Cowboys, same thing, 4-3 defensive mind there, drafted Taco Charlton over TJ Watt. Same thing with Gruden in the Raiders, drafted Colin Farrell over a Brian Burns or a Josh Allen Hines. Some of these guys just cannot get out of their own way. And I hate to see that with the Jalen Phillips, who is just extremely talented, right? Can win in the run game, has the pass rush arsenal, and just a very talented player. You gotta, if your scheme doesn't fit for a guy like that, you should probably reevaluate a little bit. It's just always been my mindset with some of these Dennis Allen guys. Saying it was the same thing with Eberflus. I could talk all day about that and everything, but I just hope they can maybe consider something like that, because you see how Austin Booker, right, in rotation has made an impact. The guy just has a crazy motor, plays his ass off, and totally has a role, right? And I think with Jalen Phillips, a little bit better against the run, so I think you can get away with it. I would hope they entertain that.
That's the thing with Phillips. Like, he's been a strong player against the run, and that's the difference. Like, I get it. Like, Dennis Allen definitely plays his defensive ends a little tighter. That's why he wants bigger bodies. And Phillips is a bigger body because he's taller, but he's not like the densest guy in the world. So it is a little bit of a weird fit. Don't get me wrong. And like, would it hurt him to play him less in space? Maybe. And I could definitely see that being a deterrent because he's played really wide out, and that's not what he's going to be doing for the Bears. But at the same time, I think he'll hang against the run. I think he's a smart player. And then he has the pass rush chops to win on obvious passing downs. You can play him a bit out wider and giving him more room to work with. There's so few guys who can win like Cam Jordan in the league, right? Like that can really legitimately win as like a 5 technique as a pass rusher. Like there's just not many guys who can do that. So if you're not willing to blitz and be creative with the back end, which Dennis Allen is, don't get me wrong, it's a hard life to live expecting these 5 technique guys to rush the passer at a high level. I think Cam Jordan was kind of a one of one in that regard. Which will ironically, Snyder, he's available, but some of the other guys, I just Odafe Owe, there's no chance in hell I think the Bears will be in on Odafe Owe. He is like a barely 250-pound edge rusher. He's the 7th ranked free agent for PFF, but I don't see it at all. Boye Mafe has the size, but again, a guy who kind of wins as a speed rusher. I really like Boye Mafe. I don't think the Bears will be in on him. Joey Bosa is an intriguing one because he had some good moments last year as a pass rusher, but he was really bad against the run, and I think it started to kind of run out of gas towards the end of the year. But Joey Bosa and Khalil Mack, Snyder, I could see the Bears going this route because they're both veterans. They both won't cost you that much. Khalil Mack has experience with Dennis Allen. He's still a really good run defender at this stage of his career. I could see the Bears going down both this route if they strike out at the top.
Yeah, I wouldn't mind dusting out my Khalil Mack jersey, even in like a rotation role. I think last year a lot of fans were excited about it. Khalil Mack jersey was staring at them like the Green Goblin mask. I wouldn't hate that reunion at all. Again, I think it'd be cheap. I think you get the return at a pretty low investment. So yeah, I would be totally game with the Khalil Mack, probably more than Bosa there. I think Khalil Mack was just always just a freak of nature and probably had a little bit more gas left in the tank.
It's insane. He's 35 years old, and he's still playing some really good ball. And I just think that's kind of where your smarts can take you because he's that kind of player. So yeah, I mean, I could definitely see this being the route. And I would hope that this would not be the only route. Like I really do want them to swing at the top for some pass rush juice, but it's going to be hard to do that if they miss out on Hendrickson or Phillips. Just moving down the list, some other guys I think the Bears will look into. Cam Jordan, who is a free agent this year. He would be like a role player at this stage. He is not offering you anything as a pass rusher, but he can still defend the run at a really high level. And it would be a bit confusing considering that's what you signed Deo to do, and you're just bringing in Cam Jordan. I'd be a little irritated about that. But, I don't think he would hurt your defensive line. So I don't know. Sam, what would you think about if the Bears brought in Cam Jordan in the twilight of his career?
The thing is, Tom, it's a very real possibility.
It is.
What they're going to value, right? The locker room presence, the veteran presence. Maybe he can help develop a Dio or Shamar on there, right? Like we're totally going to be sold on that. So I'm prepared for it because of familiarity. So again, it's not something I would do, and if we do, I'm not expecting anything out of it. But I totally see it, man.
Yeah, it would be pretty funny if that was the route they go. The last 2 names, and these are just kind of rotation guys that are going to bolster up that I actually think are decent depth. AJ Epinesa from the Bills, like prototypical Dennis Allen size, 6'6", 260. He's been more of a pass rush guy, ironically, than a run defender, but I think he's the Dennis Allen type pass rush guy who can play tighter into the formation and give you some decent snaps off the bench. The last guy I'm pretty fascinated with, I was fascinated with him coming out of college. That's Kingsley Enagbare from the Packers. This is also like your Dennis Allen of Dennis Allen type defensive end, 6'4", 258 pounds. I think he has like 35-inch arms, plays with length, defends the run, and plays with power. Like this is what they want. He's a low cost guy that I'd be willing to take a flyer on. I don't think he'll ever be an amazing pass rusher, but I really do like his game and how it would gel with the Bears.
Yeah, no, that would be a diamond in the rough find right there, Tom. And I always like the fit. I always actually like the player. He kind of killed the Bears a little bit, but
He
yeah,
always makes plays against the Bears. It's
he
crazy.
does. Yeah, no, I totally like the fit there. So yeah, Tom. I mean, I know that probably does it for the edge group there. I don't know if there's any other players you wanted to talk about.
Nope. I think that's pretty well covers it. If they don't do anything that way, then they're going to have to address the position in the draft in some capacity. I think safeties is probably the next. We talked about the interior defensive line. It's a horrible class. I doubt they're going to be in on any of them. So I don't really even think they're worth bringing up because of how bad of a class it is.
Mhm.
I think safety is the next best or next biggest need, I would say. And Steiner, I know you got to head out too at certain times, so feel free to do that. I
Yep.
will just finish this out if I have to, the last couple positions. But safety is the one I'm pretty curious about how they go about addressing Steiner. Do they go for top of the market guys? Do they want to have clear upgrades? One of the top safeties, literally this morning, is now off the market. Cam Curl just got signed to an extension by the Rams, so that leaves Brian Cook as the top. That was your boy coming out. I do remember
It
your
was.
affinity for Brian Cook. That leaves him as the top free agent. But they can go ahead and bring back Kevin Byard or maybe even Jaquan Brisker. I don't know, Senator. What kind of route do you want to see? Do you want to see them be aggressive at this position or maybe bring some of the guys they already had back?
I think where I'm at is it's going to be one of Byard or Brisker. I think that's a debate in its own. You kind of touched what I expect them to do is really value Byard's leadership, his instincts, his IQ, kind of keep that chemistry going. And I think all that stuff is very important to keep the chemistry of a secondary. But I just think it's going to be one or the other, right? And I think you have, again, assuming you would keep your capital, you have some extra shots to take. Maybe you invest in a round 2 safety, a round 3 safety. I've been asking them to do it for quite a few years now, right? I really wanted Xavier Watts last year, right? Or Kevin Winston. Even dialing back the year before, I know I wanted like the Andrew Makubas of the world, right? I've been asking to take this swing so we could be ready for this situation that's presented us now with having no safeties rostered. Maybe I can finally get what I've been asking for. But you're giving this guy a starting spot, which I'm probably fine with. So I think that's the way to do it, right? You're going to sign one of those guys, and I'd like to take a high, second, third round swing. Maybe find a depth piece with some nickel, or safety versatility, kind of what you got from Tawny Gardner Johnson last year. Maybe you bring him back on a very cheap deal because I don't think the demand for him is very high. So I think it's not going to be that hard to solve that problem. Again, you're going to pick one that you sign. You're going to draft one in a second or third round pick, and then you're going to find a depth guy, under $5 million. So I'm not really too concerned about the safety, but again, you have to be calculated, and it's definitely a huge area of need.
For sure. It's definitely a huge area of need. I think it's definitely going to be a different type that sounds looking for, maybe that fits more in line with him. If they did bring back Byard, this would maybe make things more complicated because I don't think Byard is the rangiest guy in the world. And I think that's what this defense is missing. They're looking for someone that can be more of that patroller deep in the back end. But I absolutely love Nick Cross from Indianapolis. I think his versatility is really, really appealing for me because that is the name of the game at safety nowadays. It's just how many positions can you be good at on the field because you're playing in so many different areas. You're playing on the back end as a split field safety. You're playing in the post. You're playing down in the box. You're playing in the slot. How well can you handle all of those things? And look, I think he has his limitations. I don't think he's the most instinctive player in coverage. That's Nick Cross, the safety from Indianapolis. But he's an awesome run defender. He's an awesome tackler, and he's a great athlete. And he's only going to be 25 years old to start the season. I really like him for a guy I think would be even cheaper than Brisker and maybe could be even be better. I think he's more of what you wanted from Jaquan Brisker in terms of maybe a more urgent player against the run and as more so that box safety skill set, even though he'll be playing in more areas than the box. And maybe Dennis Allen could get more out of him in terms of coverage and seeing things and clicking faster. So that's a name I really love in the safety class. Nick Cross, who's towards the bottom for PFF. There's a ton of guys I think you can just sign to be starters for you if you don't want to pay at the top. So Aloy Gilman has been a guy who started everywhere, who wherever he goes, he ends up being a starter, and teams want to replace him. But I think he's kind of like a baseline level starter. That's just like not going to blow his assignments. I think the same thing kind of about Reed Blankenship as well from Philly. He's a guy I'm keeping an eye on. I really want to see how they address this position because it is a good safety class in the draft, and there's a ton of starting options. I'm sure they're going to bring back one of the guys, and then they might sign like a low tier starter and then maybe draft someone. I could see that being a possibility in how they address this. Kobe Bryant from Seahawks, again, another option that's pretty intriguing. Was playing some of his best ball with Mike McDonald the past 2 years when he moved over to safety. So yeah, there's a ton of options. Honestly, it really is pick your flavor, what kind of skill set you want. But I would be surprised if the Bears have 2 starting new safeties next year. I think one of those guys will be brought back. My preference would be Byard. I talked about that on my mock off season. I think just having a guy who can call the defense, and I don't even know if he calls the defense, but he can do that for you if you want, and he can just get guys in the right positions because he's seen it all. At this position, your mental capacity, what you can process and stuff like that, that is, I think, what drives really great safeties. And that's definitely where Byard is at in his career. He has some athletic limitations, no doubt, but he's really still an instinctual player, especially in the passing game. So I expect that we will get 2 safeties signed in free agency. I think the Bears are going to be pretty aggressive to attack that position. And there's a lot of names to be on the lookout for. I don't think they go at the top of the market. I don't think they go for a guy like Brian Cook, who's really only had one great year, and that was this past year. He's been a really good run defender. Again, I don't know if you were paying a premium for that, but you never know. He's projected 3 years, $12 million per year. I think they're going to go maybe a little bit further down the market when it comes to safety. The next position, to me, would be linebacker. Because they just cut their starting linebacker, and we have no idea what the status of TJ Edwards will be to start the year. So I don't know if they have any starting roster or starting linebackers who will be on the field in week 1, given how late in the season that TJ Edwards' injury was. So this is a really good linebacker free agency, honestly, and a draft class, which I'm wondering if that will depress their market financially because it is a really deep draft class. There's a lot of guys that people like. But in terms of what you're looking for a Dennis Allen linebacker, I think he likes really big linebackers. And he also likes guys with some versatility in terms of who you can play a little bit on the line of scrimmage. Think Zach Bond, think Caden Ellis. Ironically, Caden Ellis is available in this free agent cycle. I could definitely see a reunion there because I thought the Bears were really missing that element of the Bears defense last year. They tried to make that guy Tremaine Edmunds. I just don't think it was a really good fit. I don't think he really played well in the line of scrimmage. So there's a bunch of different routes they could take. Leo Chanel is a guy that also kind of intrigues me in that role, a guy you're probably playing closer to the box, a really good run defender, might have some limitations in coverage, which could be a problem. But I think whichever linebacker the Bears sign, I hope is a guy that will help marry some of Dennis Allen's blitz packages and a guy you can legitimately rush and then also kind of trick defenses with him dropping out in coverage too. I think that's why we saw them value a guy like Ruben Hippolyte so high, because I thought the best thing Ruben Hippolyte did was when he was mugged up, he looked really smooth dropping back into coverage. That was like about the only thing I was like, all right, yeah, you can do this at a high level, but everything else kind of needs some work. I think the Bears are going to try to find players like that would help, that allow Dennis Allen to do that. If you look at all their third down stuff, it is like a ton of they're mugging their linebackers up close and they're sending some guys and they're dropping some guys out. So I think they're going to try to look for players that help do that for the scheme. I know Pete Warner's been talked about. If the Bears could potentially trade for him, that one would make sense. Caden Ellis would make sense. Demario Davis is a free agent. He's still playing some awesome football for being 37 years old. I would not be shocked at all if the Bears brought in Demario Davis on like a 1-year deal to kind of help them get through the season with some of the injuries that they have, because he won't cost you that much money. So there's a dump with Alex Anzalone has experience with Dennis Allen and a similar style of defense throughout his entire career. So wouldn't be surprised if that happened either. The Ravens linebacker, there's a ton of linebackers the Bears could go. I think that they'll at least sign one. Honestly, a guy I'm pretty fascinated in bringing back was DeMarco Jackson, because he played so well in his stint. Whenever he was on the field, you felt it. The defense was better with him, and I'd maybe want to explore and tap into that. Okay, was it just? It's very well true. It very well could be. Was it just kind of a fluke, kind of limited stint that he was playing really well? Or it could be he just kind of had a better understanding of the defense. It was more of what the Bears were looking for at the linebacker position. I thought he was probably a more instinctual player than Edmunds, and which is why I felt like it made a difference right away when he came in. So I would honestly look into bringing him back if they could. If it's a cost efficient deal, I'd be really, really intrigued. I'm trying to look at what his projection is right now on PFF, but yeah, there's a ton of options at the top of the market. There's a ton of options later on too. Like Quay Walker, I know, is a name that's been pretty linked to the Bears. I know a lot of fans maybe want that signing to happen. I'm not the biggest Quay Walker fan, but if he's not going to cost you that much money, then I understand trying to take the chance and trying to get more out of him than the Packers did. But really, truly, there is a ton of options here, and I'm not too worried about how the Bears will address this position. I thought it was kind of a no-brainer to release Edmunds because there's so many options in free agency that I think will cost you a lot less, and you could probably upgrade at the position. So I'm not too panicked. I'm more worried about how they'll address the defensive line more so than safety and linebacker, even though they are huge needs for this team. Other than that, though, I think that's about it. I don't really have any big free agency takeaways. I'm very curious to see their mindset, though. I think that's probably the biggest question I have heading into free agency. How will the Bears attack the positions of need? Are they going to be aggressive like they were last year? Or because they spent so much money last year, which I thought most of it was good. I mean, if you look at the offense, they crushed it. Basically, like every single signing, they crushed it. And are they going to look at it like, hey, we can do the same thing for defense if we keep up that aggressiveness on how to attack certain positions? Or will they look at what they did on the defensive side of the ball and be like, oh, we swung and missed on Grady and Deo? Or are they relying on Grady and Deo in year 2 of their stints with the Bears, which I would not. But are they going to look at it and be like, hey, we swung and missed. We're going to maybe come at this with a little more calculation, a little more reserve, and not spend a bunch of money, given that the Bears do have a lot of money tied up in people. So that's probably my biggest question. I'm sure they're not done making moves before free agency in terms of freeing up cap or exploring trades. I would be shocked if they weren't on the phones every single day and looking for different opportunities to improve. So yeah, I mean, I think that's going to be it for our free agent preview, y'all. I appreciate y'all hanging in here and giving this a view. So until we meet again, y'all, keep it real. Bear down.